It was a rocket ship and it was going to make a ton of money. I said, like, I'm probably going to take this job. And he's like, no, I don't want to only see you on the weekends. He was 13 at the time. And I was like, okay, he's right. And I'm not going to do it. You only have so much time. And I don't think people realize the indirect choices that they're making. You got to get this work thing done. And he wants to play soccer outside, right? Just go and fucking play soccer. Those trade-offs that you make, I don't think you only want to realize them when you're 90. Like, I think you want to figure that out now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Live Into Your Brilliance, the place where we dive deep and go exploring for the experiments and the insights that bring us back to the truth of who we are and help us live lives that we love right now. And speaking of love, we have got a guest that both myself and Billows genuinely love with us today. I'm super excited for this episode. So Billows, do you want to do the honors to introduce our guest?
This is our dear friend of many, many years, coming up on 2 decades now, Mr. Peter Campbell. From your crazy hitchhiking adventures to, I think you were a lecturer in finance at the university in Canada. I mean, you were the CFO of a publicly traded company in Canada. You went on to become the CFO of a NASDAQ listed company. You took a company public in the US. You've done an incredible amount. And then on top of that, you're a family guy. I mean, you have 3 beautiful children. You got an amazing wife who has been on some crazy adventures with you as well. And through all of this, what have you seen? What is the truism and wisdom that's come to you that you wish you could whisper into the ear of the of anybody who would listen?
You only have so much time. And I don't think people realize the indirect choices that they're making. The thing that made me kind of think about that, people don't realize the choices that they're making, is that when I left Mimecast in 2019, and I fully expected to get another job. I fully expected I'm going to take a break. I'm going to figure out what I want to do, and I'm going to take another job. And there was a prominent company in Boston that was looking to go public. I interviewed with them 28 times, which told me these guys don't know how to make a fucking decision. But at the same time, I knew it was a rocket ship and it was going to make a ton of money. And then I told Alex, my son, who's now in college, about it, and he had a visceral reaction to it. He was like, no. I said, like, I'm probably going to take this job. And he's like, no, I don't want to only see you on the weekends. And I don't want you to be working all the time. I don't want to. And he was 13 at the time. And I was like, okay, he's right. And I'm not going to do it. And it was the best decision I ever made. I would have made a ton of money. And I thought, think about that. Well, you were in a position to do that. You were in a position where you didn't have to, you didn't have to, and because people have to work and they have to make money and they've got to feed themselves and their families. But I think there are these indirect decisions that you make all the time. And I think a lot of people make them anyway, and you only have so much time. Like when Alex went to school at college, it just devastated me. It just floored me. And I became a stay-at-home parent, right? And then when he went off to school, it was like a piece of me. But he has to, and he's got to go do that stuff. But if I think of I didn't come from privilege. I grew up in a 3-bedroom apartment with 9 people in it. And I was lucky enough and I went I almost ended up in the juvie hall, I was very close that I didn't end up in a detention center as a 17-year-old. And I won't get into the reasons why, but I, and then I ended up going to school, and I totally fucked that up, and I ended up failing out of school. But and I was like, okay, and then I took different jobs here and there, and but I lived in Canada, and I was lucky enough to live in Canada where I go back to university and it wouldn't cost $500,000, right? And like
Yeah.
when I was 30, I went back to school and I got my accounting degree. So like there's a whole bunch of fucked up journey that happened like as a kid, and like in this, it was a nice suburban neighborhood, but it was a bit rough, and a lot of like large Catholic families, Irish and Italian, uh, which was kind of nice in a way, like a lot of latchkey kids from big families. It's a great way to learn. My kids are like way more savvy than me, but they're naive as fuck when it comes to some of that stuff. They're savvy because of the internet, but they don't, that kind of thing. It's like they're oblivious to it. And so I went back to school, and then I knew I had to do well. And then I ended up, working at EY. And even then I felt like a misfit because like I was a misfit. I was 30 in my 30s, and everybody else wasn't, and everybody looked the same in their blue suits and whatever. And I didn't. I never really fit into any of that. And then I ended up like doing really well in school, doing really well at EY. And but I was a drive. Like I had to do well. I didn't realize, I think the choices I didn't fundamentally like they were trade-offs are different. Like, but I mean, Maddie was at home a lot and I was working all the time. And then when we moved to the UK, like for an adventure, after like Will said, you got to meet these guys. And we both were UK citizens. We moved to the UK as an adventure. And then within 3 months of being there, she was pregnant. And that was a different adventure, right? We were there for 7 years. I still think fondly on that time, even though fuck, it was hard.
Yeah.
That time at Mimecast was so hard. And like
Yeah.
living like just the two of us with no support was hard. And it's only more recently that I kind of realized those trade-offs, right, that you make. And I think a lot of people like their identity comes from work, their identity comes from their job. Like, I guess because of that weirdo journey that I had there, I didn't like, there's a certain amount of like, I was the CFO, and I'd been a CFO before. And I always like people ask me, what do you do? I tell them I'm an accountant. As I am, but I I can't even do my own taxes. So, that's not what I do. But those trade-offs that you make, I don't think you only want to realize them when you're 90. Like, I think you want to figure that out now. And because you only have so much time. And you only have like, particularly as a parent, like that time is short. And everybody says it, like you could hear it. I can say it. Somebody else will say it. Yeah, I heard that before. It happens fast and you don't have that much time with them. But I wish there was a way people could realize it, so that they would be aware of those decisions they were making, the time they were not. Like a friend of mine who's like, you guys know who he is, but I don't say talking about Halloween, and he's British, so he's like, Halloween, it doesn't matter. I was like, no, dude, it's fucking important. Don't miss your kids' Halloween. It's like, it's just like trick or treating. Who cares? They care. You gotta be there for that. I was supposed to. A friend of mine was getting married in Vancouver, and he's getting married on Mother's Day weekend. Which, like, what the fuck, dude? So, like, he's an old friend. Like, I've known him for 35 years. So I agreed to go on Mother's Day weekend. And then I was like, figured out after it's Mother's Day weekend, I was like, shit. All right, I said I would go. I'm going to go. But then I found out, like, I miscued, or like, I'm an idiot, whatever. I'm an idiot. I found out that it was Alex's prom. I was going to miss his prom. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not going. I'm not going to the wedding. I'm not missing his fucking prom. And I'm there like at the beginning of it. He's in his tux or whatever. But he would remember if I hadn't been there. There's no way. Anyway, I just think it's a I wish I had realized it sooner. Maybe I would have made some different. You said to me once, Al, I know you probably remember this. It was when we were raising money in 2012, and I was living in London, and it was his fifth birthday party, or his fifth birthday party. Better get that right. And we were raising money, and we were in Boston, and you found out that I was gonna, because we had a Goldman meeting, like a dinner, and I was not gonna, was gonna miss his birthday party, and you were like, "What the hell?" Said they're not going to put on your tombstone. I should have spent more time at Mimecast. And then I'll never forget this. You and Siobhan went and she got it. You kind of talked to her and she got me a flight. And you guys got me home and I fell asleep on the bench outside for a little while, but I made his fifth birthday party. And you make like these, that actually meant a lot to me that you did that. It still does. But I would have just not done it.
It's interesting how you can see the trade-offs for others so much more clearly than you can see them for yourself sometimes. Do you know what I mean? You're kind of looking at that and you go, well, like Cambo, go here. They're not going to put that in your tombstone. But sometimes, like it's less clear to us for ourselves. You said you would have liked to have known, or maybe seen this earlier. Like, when you look back, like to what degree do you think you were conscious of your trade-offs when you were younger, or has this been more of a has this been a realization of late that you now are reflecting on? I'm just kind of curious when you look back and start to think, I became more conscious of this at what, when was that and what triggered it?
I think I think it's of late. I think you're conscious of sharp trade-offs and very obvious ones. Like if I do A, I can't do B, and sometimes you're unhappy about having to pick one of the two. I think people are really aware, and I was aware of very obvious ones, but the more subtle ones that you think maybe don't matter, like, and a stupid example, but reading your kid another story, or just spending a little bit of time, a little bit more time. Like, oh, you got to get this work thing done, and you want to play soccer outside, right? Just go and fucking play soccer. Like, and then the thing with me is I can't shut off my brain, so it would get in the way of playing soccer because I'd be thinking about the work thing the entire time, and that's very, very difficult to do, to turn that off, um, and actually be in the moment with uh, with your child, or whoever, your spouse. I probably don't take care of Maddie enough. I consider her part of me, so it's different. but but yeah, I don't think you do it, and it's really hard to do. I mean, when Alex went to school, I started seeing, for the first time in my life, I started seeing it shrink because it hit me so hard. And those are my two things I wanted from her. I said, I want to live in the moment, and I don't want to fuck up my kids with my shit. But those choices that you make, like, I don't know, how do you guys feel about it? Are you aware of, like, have you always been aware? Like, you're aware of choices you make. People are. But sometimes there's subtle ones. It's not so obvious. And it's not, you're not as aware.
My immediate response to that, Cambo, is 100%. I think during my time at Mimecast, there were definitely times where I was very aware of the choices and the narrative that I was spinning around, oh, well, I have to be there, or there's a reason why I'm going to be late for dinner with the family or miss that event. And that's like stuff I'm not particularly proud of, because there were times when I know I could have made other choices in the moment, for sure. But one of the most interesting things that I've observed more recently is is I don't sit in judgment of myself as much as I used to. I've started to let that go, because if I think about all the things that I missed for Mads and Gracie, and I did try to be a great dad, but there were definitely things that I just wasn't present for. Um, and and I I don't feel good about that at all. I'm delighted that I've been able to provide the kind of life that the girls enjoy, and I'm very, very grateful that they don't hate me, and they still want to spend time with me, and we have a lot of fun together. But the only way that I've managed to find peace with that is to let go of it for myself, let go of the judgment for myself, because otherwise I live in that narrative of regret and self beratement and so I've just had to go, you know what, I fumbled my way through, and I'm actually quite pleased that I fucked some things up, because in fucking things up I've been able to kind of, like, on the back nine of my life, I've been able to just see them for what they are, accept them for what they are, and then let go of the narrative around it, because otherwise it just, you become a prisoner to it. It haunts you too much, I think. Well, actually, you know what? This is the fucking weird thing, mate. Is it started with you and Elle, and you and I were sitting in. I had just finished Mimecast, and we went for one of our monthly breakfasts, and we were sitting in the Morgus Cafe in Wellesley, and you said, "Oh, have you heard of this book by a guy called Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul?" And I was like, "No." And I wrote it down. And then I went and got the book and I read it. And I was like, holy shit, this is some of the stuff that Al Kenny's been talking to me about. And that's where it started. And it's been a process. I mean, it's a practice, an ongoing practice. I mean, I haven't mastered it at all, but that's where it started. It started with you two beautiful souls.
We did this thing. I don't know if you remember this, where we did, it was a management thing at Mime. And I remember in the boardroom in London, and you had to say all of the roles you play, like father, like friend, colleague, like whether it, CFO and all the different things. It could be like, I don't know, squash player or whatever. And one of mine was 13th century monk. So you remember that, just like a self-flagellating monk. So like being able to actually do that is actually very intriguing. And I am thinking about that, and that the one thing, I never got through the Singer book though, because I had a hard time. It was very complicated for me, like meaning it was like it needed some real study, and maybe I'll pick it up again. But I do remember the separation from the voice in your head and what you see, and like the conceptualization of something and what it actually is, and that difference. And I think of like my, whatever it is, if you think of that journey from like that tiny little flat with 9 people in it to like now, and everybody that I used to not like to look at myself in the mirror. I still don't. I'm getting used to it on screen. It was like the opinions of everybody that I've ever seen are staring back at me right now. Everything that everyone's ever said to me about me is looking at me. But that journey and the pathways in the forest that you make, they're pretty well trodden. So what you're talking about is like not going down those paths anymore. And you do it. You just do it. You don't even know you're doing it. Like, I don't know how to stop doing. I got to find a new way through the forest. I remember people told me when I left Mime, they were like, "You're going to take another job." And I was like, well, I gotta sort of want to figure out how my brain works first. If I can figure that out, and if I could try and map some of it, that would be good. Um, so it's really interesting, kind of what you're talking about. And I don't know, like I know, I started walking down those paths when I was a little kid, right? They're still there. Um, but how do you make another journey? And it's okay. Some of those paths are pretty great, but like how do you rewire some of that thinking is very difficult, and it has to be intentional. I mean, it's slightly different topic, but
Yeah, I think well, I don't know. This is just what comes up for me. When I find myself looking backwards, I'm very much at peace, or yeah, I think much more at peace now than I have been previously with the trade-offs that I made. The trade-off thing is very interesting as well, because it does really look like a trade-off, and I wonder about that. Like, I wonder if it's a trade-off, or if that is a concept that kind of keeps us stuck a little bit, because you carry the weight of the choice that you didn't make, whatever that might look like. You carry that weight, or at least that's how it looks to me. Because I think Mimecast for me was a great experience, but it also involved like spending a huge amount of time away from Sean and the boys, for example. And I think I've told you about this story, but when Dylan was 3, Dylan, my youngest, 3, maybe no, he wasn't 4. And on a Sunday night when I was leaving, I was at home. I was just putting him to bed, and he said, "Oh, are you going home now?" And I said to him, "Oh, no, I am home." And he said, "No, no, no. This is me and Mummy's house in Finley's. You live in London." And I was like, "Oh, like wow, that stings. Like, really stings." Um, and I look back now and realize, like, I carried the weight of the choice that I didn't make for a long time, which was the choice was not to go to London and not be at home. And that looks like it's a real weight. But at the same time, you look from now and you go, actually, that was a choice that got made, whether I made it or it just was part of the kind of life unfolding in front of me. And it's led me to this point. What I find interesting, though, is how much more I'm at peace with the past, but yet a trade-off that still that kind of emerges in this moment. I then find that I'm carrying the weight of that, like the either or, and that's interesting to me, and I think it's real. I'm not quite sure. I'd love to kind of dig into this, because I guess the question I have is, what would it be like if there was no trade-off? It kind of comes back, Campbell. We had Christy Halverson, another friend of ours, on the show, and she asked the question, what would it be like if you knew you couldn't get life wrong? And I wonder about that, like, now in this moment. I wonder if that is, like, if you knew you couldn't get life wrong, would you even see that there's a trade-off? Or would it look like, well, you can do whatever you want in the moment? I liked what you said to your to your shrink. I want to live in the moment, and I don't want to pass my shit on to my kids. But the first part of it, I want to live in the moment. Do you guys think that if you're living in the moment, that the trade-offs look as real? Or are the trade-offs a function of playing the past against the future, or the future against the past?
I was waiting to see if Mark was going to answer. He's thinking.
No, I I have come to appreciate more and more that you can't get it wrong. And it's funny, just after seeing you, Cambo, for breakfast, we went up to New Hampshire, and then one of our guests for the 2 days was a founder of an awesome business here in Massachusetts called Penelope Finney, and we're going to have her on as a guest, I'm sure. But anyway, she told me about this book by this Franciscan monk called Richard Rohr, who has written quite extensively, and he grew up staunchly Catholic, and but he, he's devout Franciscan, and he's challenged a lot of the sort of pillars of Catholic Christian thinking, and he blends very beautifully in his narrative, the wisdom of all religions and philosophies. But without ruining the book for you, he wrote this book called Falling Upward. But basically, he was saying that the first half of your life is kind of building your container. It's building your identity. Like you get your job and you get your car and your house and your relationships, and you're kind of crafting the me, this is me, this is who I am, and I'm a killer, and I'm a business person, or I'm a CFO, I'm a parent, I'm all of this, I'm a soccer coach. And then the second half of your life is letting go of all of that and focusing on the sacred, focusing on the spiritual, and and realizing that in order to attain that kind of sacred side of yourself, you have to fuck things up. You have to get things wrong. You have to fail, and you have to make mistakes. And sometimes they are gruesome mistakes. But this is all in service of actually returning your soul in far better condition than when you received it, because ultimately we are all just custodians of souls. Like this spacesuit is designed to get a soul through. What do we say, Al? That we're all spirits having a human experience. We're very spiritual beings having a human experience, and so you have to go through that sort of reordering of the chaos that came before in order to pass it on. And so where I'm going with this is to say that I've increasingly come to subscribe to the idea that you can't actually get it wrong. There is no such thing as right or wrong. You can hang on to narratives and you can beat yourself up, but whatever your failings, whatever that means, and I'm putting it in inverted commas, whatever your failings, they are, if you are aware, or become aware, you will see them as being in service of becoming a better soul. And so they can't be wrong. They happened exactly as they were meant to happen.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a few things there. I mean, the first thing I thought of was like my kids are like, sometimes my kids are so afraid of making mistakes that they don't act, and it's just fuck it up. And actually, I had this discussion with Pete one day. I remember standing at the corner of King's Cross before it was nice, like before the Nando's was there even. And I remember telling him, Pete, we need to let people make mistakes. And his response was, no. I was like, what do you mean, no? You have to make mistakes. You got to screw things up. I get that. But I do think, I don't know that I think your sense of right and wrong is a human construct, right? I don't know if there's a right or wrong in the universe without humans, which if we keep on at this pace, there won't be any humans anymore. But I think an absolute right or wrong. I mean, what I think is right. I grew up Catholic. I've spent the last however many decades deconstructing a lot of that. But questioning, always questioning. I don't know that I could believe that that some absolute on that. I still think some of those things are like, you can't go and kill somebody. That's wrong. Like, I still have some of these very deep rooted morals, but I think what you're talking about, like from an absence of self, I'm not. I don't think I think that the fact that there is no self, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't think I can't, like, that's the way I couldn't get through the Singer book. Like, I can't think in that way yet. It's very difficult. I mean, there's still, the whole idea we were talking about, like, you can't conceptualize certain beliefs, because if you do, then you're not, to explain a particular belief needs a conceptualization really to surface it to someone in that way. But then when you do that, you're not explaining it. So
yeah,
in that case, like enlightenment or like the idea of self or something. I don't quite know how to get there. I'm just trying to make these other paths in the forest, man. I'm just trying to like, And he's trying to rewire certain things and have different experiences, like, and just try and, um, and I still do, like, to Al's point, like, if you could, what if you couldn't, if everything, like, you couldn't make a wrong decision. I know I'm paraphrasing. That's not how he said it. Um, I'm trying to do the right thing, usually, in whatever universe everyone I've ever interacted with has influenced these synapses to do and think about. I'm just trying to make the right decision in that context. And I try and take in as much. So I don't know, like social media ones and fives and like just narrowed viewpoints is all you get, I think is very damaging. Because you need, in order to, like, all you're trying to do is make decisions around that in the context of everyone that's ever talked to you and everything that you've ever done or experienced. And if you narrow that focus again and again and again, you don't want to hitchhike across the country. If you narrow it and you stay in your room and you never leave your house and all you do is look at social media, what is the basis for your decisions as a human being in this broader universe? I think you need to expand that input.
But Cambo, when I chat to you, I mean, you are one of the most curious human beings I've ever met, and I don't mean curious as in as I don't mean curious as in something you gawk at in a museum.
That
I
too.
mean, you are you are naturally curious, and you have this intellectual curiosity and this mischief. Because I mean, you ship with a lot of mischief and a lot of humor, but you have this curiosity about the
So
world.
did
And I mean,
Bauer.
hey,
So did Bauer. Anyway,
yeah, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. That's probably why you guys were so good for each other, and made such amazing adventures together. But you have this curiosity, and I think you know I really do maintain that it's very hard to be in judgment of the world all the time if you're curious about the world. I think it trumps judgment. And I'm not saying that you're not. I'm sure there've been times in your life where you're very judgy about, probably more about yourself than the rest of the world. But because you have this insatiable curiosity, I don't see you as a very judgy person. And I think your curiosity also means that you are probably more aware than you even realize. I think you're making choices between the stimulus and response that are probably fueled by this wonderful curiosity more than anything.
I mean, that's quite flattering and tempting to agree with it and not realizing or thinking that I am the asshole sometimes that I think I am. But I do think that I have and I've kind of said, I have this struggle sometimes between, did I tell you guys, between compassion and misanthropy. And it's like just small things, right? I mean, I live in Massachusetts. People don't use their blinkers a lot of the time. So you're waiting to turn left and somebody's coming and they turn right. You're waiting, they come, they turn right. It's like, use your fucking blinker, dude. And then I think, Jesus, and then I can't go. Now I got to wait another, that's just a light of. But then, like, I don't want to be a misanthrope. I'd rather be compassionate about it. And that's a stupid little thing. I mean, who cares really? But for other things, like maybe like you don't know what that person's been through. You don't know what their day is like. You don't know what's going on. You make an immediate assumption, right? And this is part of the new paths in the forest that I want to make. Like I don't want to walk down the immediate like fucking dick. Just use your fucking blinker. I don't want to walk down there anymore. It's like anger is like punishing yourself for somebody else's mistake. So that curiosity that you talk about is a fight for compassion, particularly in today's America. There's very little compassion, and
Yeah,
kindness is taking a back seat. Um, and I hope that's not
100%.
our destiny as a species. I really hope it isn't. Not only for my kids' sake, but the rest of the world out there. I hope it's like we can find that compassion, and it's hard sometimes. But that I mean, who knows? You gotta the advent calendars. Why all advent calendars have chocolate or toys in them? As a kid, all it had was a little picture, it's just like a picture of something. Oh, Christmas scene, woo! But anyway, everybody's like the idea that everyone has a story that you don't know, right? Everybody has their own shit back there.
Yeah.
So maybe you should like maybe that's what you mean, or when you talk like I don't know. I thought everybody was a bit curious about stuff. Sorry, you were gonna say something else.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think you have slowed down? And what I mean by that is when you say you wanted to walk or tread new paths through the forest, do you think you're walking more slowly through life now than you have been previously?
Yes, absolutely. Um, I used to like to have Mindcast is a great experience for me. There are times where it was really fucking hard and I hated it, and the other times are and I'm everybody. It's life, right? But I remember when I was at SRT, my first CFO role, and I was on the I was work. There was a time there where I was working 16 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week. Um, and then I took another job, and I was sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, and I was going crazy. I like to have so much on that I could choose the things I wanted to do, and so much ongoing, and so much interaction with other people. And then that happened again at Mimecast, where it was just one thing after, and just the interactions with people and the camaraderie, particularly in the early days. And then there's just so much you just don't have time. Um, and I've had to kind of face that time more since then, like back to figuring out how my brain works. Um, so yeah, certainly walking more slowly, but still feeling a bit lost, or maybe opening myself up to be being lost where I wasn't before.
That's just such a powerful statement, opening yourself up to being lost. I, I that just feels really almost profound because I wonder if the feel what we interpret as like being lost is somehow strangely the same as being at home. You know what I mean? Like being in the moment is not knowing like exactly where you are because this is just my ration. I'm just taking what you said, opening yourself up to being lost. Because what if that is the key to be lost in this world, like be totally open without needing to have like our um I don't know, like our what do you call them? Our landmarks and our comfort blankets and because I wonder if part of life and control is like, well, I know if I'm going from one thing to the next to the next to the next, then I'm in control because like bang, this is but actually it's almost like running on autopilot. And I'm not saying that's what you were doing, by the way, but it was kind of where my question came from about slowing down. Because like I've moved back into this job with Jewel, which I'm enjoying. And at the same time, I'm noticing like I'm speeding back up. And I'm not necessarily seeing that as a good thing. It's like that, like, oh yeah, like there's so much stuff to that can be done. It's just easy to load up the hopper and then you're like, okay, next. And suddenly I'll find myself back the way it was in the past if I'm not mindful and not slowing myself down. And yeah, sorry, we'll go for it.
Is there like a second, you know, awareness you need? Like to some of the things like you're talking about, Mark, um, I don't see how you operate in the real world if you were purely and really 100% like that. Maybe as a monk on a mountain somewhere, but like you have to operate and you're a dual and there's competing like forces, Al, for your time and for to try and drive the results of the business, and everyone, you're all trying to take it in a particular direction, and you almost have to be like that. But if you can't lose the other, maybe that's your voice in your head, and you can't lose your consciousness back to the, like look around you, like from that Michael Singer book, and get the voice in your head to explain to you what you're seeing. It can't. It can't give you the details of the minutia of all the leaves on the trees and everything. It can't. And so maybe that consciousness you're talking about, that speeding up, is that voice in your head taking the driver's seat for a while.
I think, Camber, you're making a brilliant point, because I don't think it's about being permanently in that state. Like, and I mean, the freaking Dalai Lama is not permanently in that state. And I think, going back to this concept of failing, I think probably one of the greatest joys of living is noticing when you're fucking dropping the ball, when you're fucking it up again. And then but instead of judging yourself and being harsh on yourself, you can just have a chuckle and you go, there I am. I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again. And then in the remembering, you then fall back into the, okay, I can actually, Al mentioned our friend Christy, like she's got this lovely saying. She's like, weather is just weather. Sometimes it's shitty and sometimes it's glorious, but it's just weather. So why don't you just practice noticing the weather? And so, and because we are human, and I think that's the beauty of the design, is we're going to oscillate, and we are so fallible. So like when we do like latch on to the fact that it is dark and stormy out there, and how dare it be dark and stormy, and don't they fucking know that I need sunshine, and then it's like, and then you notice and you're like, okay, it's just weather. And so it can pass through as easily as it came in. And so to your point, I don't think you can live your life. And even if you were a monk sitting on top of a mountain, you'd still curse the weather from time to time and then have to remind yourself that it's just weather. But I think the great joy of it all is exactly what you're pointing to, which is, I don't want to walk down that path anymore. I want to forge a new path through the forest. I've never trodden on that part of the forest. It's kind of scary, but fuck me, I'm going to go bundu bashing, because I know enough, I'm aware enough, and I've seen enough not to want to go down that path. And it may be hard, but it's just weather. It's okay. And I think the more you practice that, the easier it becomes to find new paths and delight in new paths, even if they're tricky.
Yeah, no, well, I agree with what you're saying, Billows. There's something though that's really, and it kind of comes back to this question about trade-offs and just the whole spirit of this conversation, I think. And I want to put something to Cambo because I'm curious if what's coming up for me is, or to get his reaction. I've not finished the whole of that Richard Rohr book that you've shared, but there was one thing that he said in there that really struck me, which he said, Westerners are spiritually lazy. And it really it stuck with me, and it's still there. But it's interesting what I interpreted that to mean, because I think sometimes that can look like, oh, you've got to go and spend time going on your spiritual journey. But actually walking through a forest is a spiritual journey. That is the spiritual journey. Like, as I see it, like we're kind of all on it. But I think the laziness, at least for me, is in, it's going to sound bizarre, but it is in the speeding up. It's the not slowing down to realize that you get, well, at least this version gets one turn of this wheel. Like, you get to have this, you're a spiritual being having this human experience. Now you might get another one. I might get another one, but I don't know that. Like, that is something I guess I will find out when this spacesuit runs out of juice, and I either go back to the spiritual, like I go back to the spiritual land of my fathers, or I don't, and there's just nothing, and that's it. It's over. Or I find that I come back in a new spacesuit, but I forget that I had this spacesuit. So you get one go round at being a spiritual being having a human experience. And within that, you have the opportunity to mindfully tread your path through the forest. Or you can just run through the forest as fast as you can, thinking you got to get to the other side of the stuff. And then look back and go, fucking hell, I've got scratches on my arms, and I've knocked small children out of my way to get here, because like that's the game. And the bit that I've heard in this whole conversation is like there's loads of fun to be had. Like there's hiking from South America back to Canada. There's like going on incredible business journeys. There's raising fantastic kids, but the key to it is like if you can slow down enough, you can purposefully tread your path in the forest. That might take more than no effort. It's like actually sometimes slowing down and, actually not just letting the conditioned synapses run the show, and slowing down and opening ourselves up to being lost to our own adventure requires a bit of effort.
Look, I think you're absolutely 100% right. I think the comment that Westerners are spiritual lazy is a little unfair. Like we haven't been trained that way. But at the same time, maybe you could say like lazy. And so you know, what drives behavior? Like what drives somebody to like, and it's not just about forming habits and, but uh, is it like what would make someone want to do that? Like, what is the realization? For me, like I'm 61. Uh, I started seeing a shrink because of pain, a lot of pain. And, self created, like it's in my brain. Somebody's not poking me with a screwdriver or anything. So what makes people take a spiritual journey? What would drive? And like most, like living in America, it's I think there's a lot of spiritualism, like in Christianity, particularly among people that are less well off. They'd look to religion, right? So I don't think you're wrong, and I think that journey is super important. And as a species, is that something that we're going to do? Maybe we have to, but like, what's going to make us want to do it? Because like when we kind of started, you can't tell somebody what it's like to be a parent. It's really, really hard. Maybe there's some great poet that can. I don't know. And then maybe the spiritual journey, like it's an undeveloped muscle existence and our world. Like thinking about the drive, like we all run through the forest as fast as we can, knocking over children. Get out of my way. Sorry, it's a very cartoony image of that whole thing. But so what's going to make us want to do that? I want to do it. I do. But I do want to figure that out. And I'm not even sure I understand all the things. Like when I talk about the path, it's like the things that I just do the same things unconsciously. I think the same ways unconsciously. And I don't want to do that anymore. But that's just like, how many people are going to think that? And how can you broaden this, like the spiritual strength of a people?
Hmm.
How do you do it? I don't know.
Well, my hunch is, for what it's worth, it makes me think of, and I think I've quoted Sydney Banks on here before, the old Scottish mystic, when he says, and he talks about he talks about not being afraid of our experience, but he was like, if men only learn not to be afraid of their experience, that would change the world. But I've also heard him then talk about it, and someone said, oh, but and they asked the same question, but how do you get everybody to want to do that or go on the journey? And I'm giving my interpretation because I can't remember exactly what he said. But how I heard it was, he was like, oh, you don't try and get everybody. You just be it yourself. And he said, and even if you didn't come in contact with another human being, that would still be changing the world. And for the longest time, I didn't quite understand that, because I was thinking, well, how does that change the world? But I think it comes back to like whether or not we believe that in some way we're all really interconnected beings, and we don't really understand how, but we are. And I think this podcast in one sense is our like gesture in service of that, because I think it's like people hearing about like this awesome CFO, and people have a stereotypical view perhaps of what a CFO is and like what they're like and who they're going to be, and then it's like, oh fuck, this dude is talking about this, and then they hear your story, and then that might just trigger something in someone who goes, maybe tomorrow I'll slow down and just see what's in this forest. So I don't know the answer, but I do have a hunch that it lies actually in not trying to get everyone to do it, but in more, opening ourselves up to the possibility of being it to the fullest capacity we have, which again I think is often more challenging than it sounds, which is why I think it's sometimes easier to go, yeah, okay, I'm going to go back to running through the forest, knocking the kids down, because what you just described there sounds a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fair.
No, I was just going to say, I think those are wise words. I don't think it is our responsibility, and I think that you can drive yourself insane taking on that challenge of trying to feel responsible for making others see it. But we've said this many times on this podcast, like, awake people awaken others. And I think the more time you spend practicing being awake, I think that transmits across the consciousness of it all in
Yeah.
some way.
I think the only way, and I don't mean that in a negative, like I think of it as a positive only way. Yeah, I like this answer, or you can't. You just be, um, you know, I quite like that actually. It's funny, all these old print that. I don't want to make it trite, but like my uber Catholic grandmother, just like, you focus on yourself and what you need to do. Or even like a Gandhi, like, you be the change that you want to see in the world. Like, you do
Yeah.
it yourself. Do it to yourself. Yeah. So I will keep the struggle between compassion and misanthropy. Oh, this helps push the compassion to the fore. And walking down this, there's a lot. I just don't know enough yet. There's still a lot I've got to learn. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Or everything you'll ever need to know. Who knows? But it's good. It's good to know that a good old Catholic grandmother and Gandhi are saying the same thing. That's pretty cool. We do
they're
have
probably born around a similar time.
we do have a closing tradition, which I'm pretty excited for this one, which is that we ask our guests to design their own bumper sticker for life. So if the Peter Campbell bumper sticker for life, what would it say and why?
Oh my God. I don't, I don't like something on the back of my car. Like, gets uber complicated. Like, what is there? Like, what are you doing putting something on the back of your car for somebody else to see? What does that mean? Why are you trying to, like, it's like a whole, let alone the message. So one thing is the message. What is the message you'd like to leave for humanity? But then if you're putting it on the back of your car, in traffic,
Well, that's why,
right? You're trying to send that message out in traffic.
That's why I think slow down, shithead is perfect.
And actually, slow down, not the shithead part. But then people are going to get mad. But then maybe that's actually a pretty good one, but it's yours. But I would take that. Slow down. Slow down is actually pretty good. Just like that.
Yeah.
It's hard. And people are going to take it to mean traffic, right? Like, and then you're going to find you got a whole bunch of people that are riding your ass on the highway at 70 miles an hour, right? It's like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, no, that's a good one, Mark. I'm going to use that one.
Okay. Well, your one sounds so much
slowing down.
It's just like slow down, but Mark's is good then. Slow down, shithead. That's not going to get the compassionate response we might have been looking for.
Well, it's going to be only interpreted to be how fast they're driving, not what they're doing in life, probably, because they'll be reactive to it. Depending the way that the letters look could also have an effect on the person reading it.
Yeah.
Because if they can take it to the other stage of what we're talking about, it has a different meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the most deeply thought about response to the question in terms of like the meaning of bumper stickers and like what it says. So it says everything about you, Cambo, in one sense for me, which is like this whole conversation has been such a treat. It feels like old times. It did when we had breakfast the other day. It's like having pretty wonderful conversations that go in lots of different directions, and you're just such a funny, thoughtful, wise person. Like, and you might not like looking in the mirror, but I want to hold that mirror up for you, because that's who you have been for me from the very first moment I met you. This funny, thoughtful, wise dude who, whenever I'm in your company, I leave better for it. And this conversation has been the exact same. So
every time.
yeah, well, maybe not Gilgamesh, but aside from that, like every other time. No, good.
Yeah.
But no, genuinely, man, I love you.
That's
And
really nice hearing.
thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom, not just with myself and Billows, but for anyone who's tuning in as well. It's been awesome.
Cheers, guys. Been really nice. It's good to see you again as well. I can't give as good a response as you did. I just know that it's there, you know?
Well, I mean, if I may, I'm just going to say, like, I hope that this conversation is just a teaser, because I mean, you know, we have a few people that we love to bring back, and it'd be freaking awesome if you came back from time to time whenever the feeling grabbed you, because not only would it just be a sheer delight just to have this and banter, but also, I mean, they are. I mean, I can just think of a dozen conversations off the bat that you and I have had, the three of us have had over the years, where we could just pull on those threads for hours and hours. And to Al's point, like, because you have like this, just this wonderful, slightly offbeat sense of humor, an encyclopedic knowledge of like archaic TV shows and comic strips and things that some people have never even heard of, and you can recite the lines from all sorts of weird and wonderful books, movies, and songs. You stitch together this this rich fruit salad that somehow just makes perfect sense in the moment, and your wisdom comes flowing through. And I think it'd just be wonderful to have you back so we could enjoy more of that, because that's what we love you for, man.
I don't know how to top that. You know, is like I'm a self-effacing, you know, I was raised by British people, man. Scottish, I should say. It's lovely. It's really lovely from both of you. And I'm almost embarrassed, and I'm happy to do it any time if anybody wants to listen to me talk. But I'd always be happy to chat with you guys, regardless of on here or wherever.
Cool, man. Well, we're going to take you up on that on here and wherever as well. Folks, that is a wrap for this episode. I hope you have enjoyed catching up with our friend Campbell as much as myself and Billows have. And you know what? Slow down. Tread that path through the forest and open yourself up to being lost. Who knows what you might find? Go forth and live into your brilliance.